Hello and welcome to Slooh's latest Clubhouse clip. This is going to be a really fun Clubhouse clip in particular, just because we've been hearing a lot lately about our Slooh's expedition to the Faroe Islands to see this total solar eclipse. Along the way, we stopped at Iceland. We saw the northern lights from there. But we're here today to get a different perspective from another very close member of Slooh who's taken a trip to Alaska. And this is our Slooh Astronomer Bob Berman, who's here with us today to share some really incredible footage of the aurora that is taken along his current expedition there. It's absolutely a sight to see. There's been, as you might have heard in the news, some incredible solar activity that's going on right now that is making looking up at the aurora from these northern latitudes really a piece of work. It's something that I'm looking forward to sharing with you today. And so welcome, Bob Berman, to this Clubhouse clip. Thank you so much for joining us today from the far Alaska up there up north. How is everything over there?
Oh, it's great, Eric. It's really great. We do this, of course, every year for Slooh. We have this expedition. It's really in partnership with the Old Farmer's Almanac and Astronomy magazine. Half a month in March. We've been doing this since 1999, and each year we capture whatever auroras are happening and share them with our Slooh community. And this year, whoa, just by some incredible luck, the sun is just exploding. This is the heaviest period of solar activity that we've had in some time, and I can tell you the best auroras that we've seen since the year 2000.
Really? Wow. Like that's a while. And you say you've been going on these trips every year. So each year comparing that, 15 years go by. This is the time. This right here.
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely. And it's true that sometimes you'll get one night with great auroras. I won't bore you with the category and the number system of it, but the things that we're always looking for to make an aurora really worthwhile is it a mere glow or does it have definition? Can you see detail in it? How much of the sky does it fill? How bright is it? Is it moving? Usually there's going to be some leisurely motion, but we're talking about the kind of motion that's so leisurely that you can't really honestly see anything change. If you look away for 10 seconds and look back, then you'd say, oh, yes, I see it. It's a different pattern now somewhat, but not actual movement. By contrast, here we have rapid motion. So and then color. Is there any color? Red is a pure red aurora is considered a once-in-a-lifetime event. So do we just have the plain green or other colors? So there are a lot of criteria that make up a good aurora. What makes this extraordinary is with our expedition here, which is now 1 week old, we have 1 week to go, is that all of those conditions have not just been met, but night after night after night. We have extraordinary good weather. That's why we always take our groups to this secret place in central Alaska where it tends to be clear. People in Iceland got lucky, you know, our Slooh team in Iceland hit a great aurora night on a night that it was clear. But we have had some refugees in past years from Iceland expeditions who told us in a crestfallen way that they were there for a week and had only overcast for a week. So it's not just the aurora. You want to be under the auroral oval in a place that's likely to have clear skies. And I know I'm hogging the conversation here, but the auroral oval is like a donut, a glowing donut right out of a 7-Eleven or Dunkin' Donuts that's almost always present. And what matters is how bright is it, how thick is it. At times of great solar activity, it not only thickens, but also migrates southwards so that more southerly latitudes can see it. For example, the other night, people were seeing this in the northern United States, and there were photographs from New England showing the glow, but not, of course, the detailed definitions that we've been seeing here and that we're going to share with you.
These physical features, these themes, yes, they're things that we're going to be exploring tonight. But before we do, this is right here what we're showing right now. This is a picture from your camera, right, where you are around. Could you give us a little bit of background on your locale, like what you've been doing, what
Yes,
you've been
exactly.
seeing?
We're in central Alaska, in the places that we visit every year when we do these for Slooh and for the Old Farmer's Almanac or Astronomy magazine. These are people that join us, trusting that we're going to get them to a place away from city lights to see the aurora. Now, some people go up to Alaska and they take a cruise, which is almost invariably in the summertime. These are all shots I took yesterday, by the way, right in this vicinity of where we are in central Alaska. They take a cruise and then they tell us, well, we didn't see any auroras. And then I'll point out to them, and you went in July or August, right? And they'll say, yes, of course. And I'll say, well, first of all, you were south of Anchorage where there are much fewer auroras because that's usually outside of the auroral oval. And secondly, you did not have night, did you? Not for a second. And they'll think about it and they'll go, yeah, come to think of it, yeah, it never really got fully dark. So we'll go, well, duh. So this is why our expeditions are always in February or March, where we've slightly escaped from the coldest time. For example, January can often be 50 below zero, certainly 40 below zero for days and days and days on end. Last year, the temperature never got warmer than 40 below zero during the entire month of January. So by coming in late February or early March, we escaped that. But also, there's still enough darkness. As you well know, once you hit the equinox, it's 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark everywhere in the world, including here in Alaska. So the light is growing now at the rate of 7 minutes per day, or almost an hour per week. So, for example, last week, when I did an outdoor introduction to the polar sky talk, a brief talk that I always do during these expeditions, we held it at 9:30 and it was just barely dark enough. But now, this week, for this next group, there's 1 hour more light than there was just a week ago. So we have to push, we have to push back such a talk. So you don't want to wait too long because then you don't have enough night. So it's a balancing act, and that's why we come at this time. So these images are showing you this part of Alaska. We want to get away from the lights of town, of course, because the artificial lights are the enemy of the aurora. You don't want to come during a bright moon, another enemy of the aurora. So we revolve it around the dark of the moon, and that's why we're here now. But you don't know if you're really going to get clear skies. You don't know if the sun is going to be sending out tremendous storms. And we've had everything from level 3, which is a moderate aurora, but it's not moderate here. A level 3 actually produces tremendous auroras, to as high as 5, which are, that's as extraordinary as, let's say, a new beautiful woman every single day telling you, I'm falling in love with you just seeing you as I'm passing you on the street. What's your name? I'd like to meet you. Imagine a different beautiful woman doing that every day. This is one of those things that as I'm bringing you this live spontaneous report, you say to yourself, that was a stupid thing I just said, and if I were writing this up, I could edit that and remove it, but once you've said it, you can't take it back. So let me just say, unusual. We're seeing very unusual things that I'm so happy to share with Slooh members here in the clubhouse.
It really, I mean, unusual is the word for it. It's so unique, and you were saying it hasn't been this incredible in about 15 years. So what I want to say to the people watching at home right now, just turn down your lights in your room a bit. Just get into the darkness. Just have your screen, this glow of your screen, because we're about to transition to some really incredible images. And so try and just absorb the experience and get into the moment here, because without further ado, here is the Alaskan Aurora from Bob's Aurora expedition. Now look at that.
So, yes, and just to get a scale of the scale of this thing, in the foreground, you can see some distant street lights. We're outside of the city, but this is sort of a rest stop off a highway. And then perhaps you can see, depending upon the resolution of your screen, some trees there on the lower right. So this image is just to show you the size of this. That's another criterion for auroras. Are they just like little skimpy parts of it? And now you can see that color, that arc of unusual color in this particular image. Of course, Eric, our producer here, is smart enough to know that a basic rule of show business is build up to your better stuff. So let me just say, this is the least of it. These are all current images during these nights. This is daytime right now, so we're in a pause between our nights of observing, but we're bringing you the current images of the auroras from Alaska. They've been on a nightly basis. And when I say the best aurora since 1999, that doesn't mean that there haven't been moments that have been this good that nobody in Alaska has seen. But to see them night after night, that with the colors and the motion that we've seen, and we'll get to that in a moment, this has been really extraordinary. And of course, the basis are explosions on the sun, coronal mass ejections and X-class flares. And as the sun continues to rotate, often you'll get one event like this, one blast of subatomic particles, mostly electrons, traveling typically 500, 600 miles per second. And as they excite the atoms in our upper atmosphere, we're talking about roughly 100 miles up, because our atmosphere, of course, is bathed within a magnetic field. Electrons moving across a magnetic field will produce electricity, and it's really the electricity that's causing this to happen. So it's mostly from oxygen, which are being stripped typically of 2 of its electrons. So we have doubly ionized oxygen. And when the electrons return and fall back to their preferred orbits, they characteristically give off a glow at 5577 angstroms. And fortunately for us humans, that's the peak place where human vision is sensitive. So that's why we get the green color. It's in the green part of the spectrum. And anytime you see that it's looking white, that's actually a little bit of overexposure. I will say that even when the aurora is quite bright, in this last week's group of 30-odd people, about 1/4 of the group, I took a survey, that's why I can tell you this, 1/4 of the group said they did not see color. They saw it looking as a pale white. But 3/4 of the group saw a very, very distinct green. And when you photograph it, the green shows up beautifully. And most people saw it as a very vivid green. So it's interesting how the vagaries of eyesight, individual eyes, can come up with these differences. Notice in this image, you'll see a star on the left side through the aurora, but on the right side, the aurora is too bright to allow any stars to shine through. That's one of the things that are kind of the telltale signs of how bright the aurora is. But one of the real oddities is the equipment that we're using to take these images, which is very fancy equipment. It's a Canon Mark III. For some of you who knows what that means, in this particular case, paired with a fixed 50 millimeter f1.2 lens. You know, you're talking about $8,000–9,000 worth of camera taking this. And despite that, on most years, for us to bring you these Slooh images, for example, last year, our typical exposures are 8 seconds or 6 seconds. I'm sorry, I said 8. I really meant to say 6 with that equipment. So taking individual 6-second exposures, and then later, if we feel like it, we'll splice them together carefully and then create a little bit of a movie showing the aurora in motion. It won't be true time. It'll be a sped up version because, of course, with at least a 6-second pause between images, you can't help but speeding it up sixfold. But this year, the auroras were so bright, and we're talking about these nights. When I say this year, these aren't old images. This is what we have been seeing last night, and throughout this past week, we've had clear skies every single night, fortuitously. And the auroras were so bright that it allowed us to do something extraordinarily rare, and that is to use video. Now, video image means that, and here we're showing you now some real-time video where the exposures are only 1/30th of a second, which even with this good equipment is not a long enough exposure usually to capture anything. But here we're looking at 1/30th of a second, video images, and the other rare thing is that you can see that there is visible motion, palpable motion. Now, normally the auroral changes are sort of like watching the minute hand of a clock. Yes, they change, but they're very slow. And here you can perceive that the changes are palpably visible. And yet this is the dimmest of the videos we're going to show you. It's just going to get better after this. And as the night goes on, also the aurora shifts in both direction of the sky and in the clarity. They often look like curtains, straight lines that form rustling drapes. And as the night proceeds, typically they become those folds in the tapestries and the drapes become more pronounced. They become more curved to each other. So the auroras early in the night tend to be almost straighter, if that's the line, still looking like a drape. And then as the night goes on, they become more folded. The colors, as we look at this video now, often appear at the bottom. The bottom still means 60 miles up. The top of the aurora may be 110 miles up. And in these real-time images, meaning they're not being sped up. I just can't emphasize that enough. We're not showing you individual stills and splicing them. This is what the eye was seeing, and the changes are visible. This is behind a mountain ridge. On the lower right-hand side, you can see the top of the mountain. All the rest of these images are the bottom, the sharply defined bottom is not because the aurora is being intercepted by a ridge, but because the bottom of the aurora just ends that abruptly. And so as we look at this, you'll see some trees in the foreground. We're in these places, we're 100 miles from any town. So we're quite in a dark scene as we bring you these Slooh reports of the auroral oval. Now, every aurora we see, the pattern, like modern art, is all part of this giant donut, the auroral oval. And interestingly enough, the precise pattern is duplicated in the southern hemisphere. In other words, there's a mirror image. What you're seeing right now, there's a precise mirror image of it occurring at the same moment in the southern hemisphere. That's because the electrons, once they get captured by Earth's magnetic field, they actually try to get past our magnetosphere, and then they snap back, and then they tend to get flipped back and forth from one pole to the other in about a 20th of a second from one pole to the other. And as they do so, they produce corresponding patterns in the opposite hemisphere. I've been hogging the conversation. Eric, any questions or comments you'd like to interject? before I continue ranting and raving here?
I'm just like sort of sitting here with my mouth open because I mean you make such a good point and about these are real time. This is how they're moving and shifting as they're looking in front of your eyes. I mean, how rare is this?
Yes, yes. It is just because of the speed, the motion, and also you can clearly see pink fringes at the bottom. So what makes this unusual is the brightness, bright enough for us to be able to capture video rather than just long exposure stills that are assembled artificially into a sped up, artificially enhanced motion. And so the brightness is unusual and the speed of the motion is unusual, not unheard of. In fact, they can even flicker a little bit faster than this, but seeing this degree of speed is unusual. Now I'd like to, in this video, now these were all taken. Now, I told you these current images during this current trip. We're now hand holding the camera and we're pointing it straight overhead. And I want you to watch this purple part of this
Ooh.
aurora. There it goes, straight overhead. In fact, I'd love to, when we're finished with showing this clip, I wouldn't mind looking at it again. And now we're panning to the northwestern sky. And what you saw overhead was just part of a pattern occurring here in the northwest. Now, in a moment, you'll see some very interesting development. This was all happening around midnight, and the auroral shapes are not uncommon for that time of the night. In other words, they're not winding around themselves as tightly as you're likely to see at 3 or 4 in the morning. The green color, again, from that 5577 angstrom glowing oxygen. The red you see, look, you can see at the bottom, central left, a little red, also from oxygen, in this case at 6400 angstroms, the same color as a laser pointer, interestingly enough. Nitrogen can also produce a red aurora, but most of the colors we see are from oxygen. And I don't know if you have the capability of re-showing that particular clip again, but I wouldn't mind looking at that one again. It was
Yeah, here we are replaying
really
it just now.
okay. So we're again bright enough to be captured. Okay, here we go. We're looking straight overhead. Look for that purple flash. There it is, as it's like traveling along the aurora. So we're looking straight up from underneath an auroral oval. Now we're looking at the folds of the curtains more obliquely because those are not quite straight up. And we'll see some of the folds changing in real time while watching. All of this due to an unusual period of solar activity. I started to say that, okay, normally you'll get a single CME, let's say, a giant storm on the sun, a coronal mass ejection, and usually if it hits the center of the sun, that's not actually the optimum spot. The sun must rotate another 2 to 3 days so that we want the storm to be a little to the right or west of dead center, and then it's perfectly positioned to follow the sun's own magnetic field, which is shaped rather like a spiral, the kind you might get from those lawn sprinklers that produce a spiral pattern, called a Parker spiral. And that was your idiotic host, me, standing right in front of the camera for a moment. That's what you just saw. And then it's in a position to send that detritus from the broken bits of the atoms, hurl it in our direction, and typically it'll arrive here 3 days or so later, 2 days if it's a particularly fast bit of material. And then it may last a night. It might last 2 if you're lucky, and then that's the end of it. And so we're using the word rare over and over. I don't want to overuse the word, but the fact that we're getting these levels of aurorae night after night after night. Now, we've just experienced 1 full week of them, and although there is expected to be a lull tomorrow night, that is Wednesday night, For people who are watching this in the Clubhouse right now, I know this may be rebroadcast, so I'll use days of the week just to make it clear. Wednesday night, we should get a brief lull with only level 2 auroral activity, which means low activity. And then Thursday, Friday, back to the moderate level, which is not moderate. These are all occurring on a night where it's officially moderate. Moderate is not moderate if you're right underneath the auroral oval, which is where you can be in Iceland or central Alaska. And then on Saturday night, it's supposed to jump all the way. In fact, we're supposed to get a 4 by Friday and then a level 5, very high level. 4 is characterized as active, 5 is high. And that's when members who are in the northern half of the United States, you don't have to be here in Alaska, that Saturday night may well produce auroras that wander as far south so that you'll be able to see it from places, perhaps even in the central United States if the weather is clear. Now the moon is growing in size, so we're talking about probably a first quarter moon by that time, but a first quarter moon is not too bad. In fact, it won't interfere very much. Some of our members are amateur astronomers and may be well aware that a half moon is not half as bright as a full moon, but 1/10 as bright as a full moon. Doesn't seem possible, does it? Because there's half a moon in the sky. Why is it not half as bright as a full moon? But it's only 1/10 as bright, and that's because the full moon, it's not just the amount of the moon that's lit up, it's that the alignment is right so that the sunlight is reflected right back to our eyes like a movie screen, so that the little bits of especially silicon on the moon, because the moon is half oxygen, amazingly enough, and then 1/4 silicon. So you get a lot of silica, that is SiO2, and that can send the sunlight straight back to our eyes. So that's what we see at full moon. The full moon explosively brightens 2.5 days before the full moon. The moon reaches half of its full moon brightness. And so you really don't want to be watching for auroras 3 days before the full moon to 3 days after. But you will avoid that even this coming weekend. So again, our members, especially in the Northeast, if you live in Vermont or New Hampshire, or especially Minnesota, any of the northern states, but perhaps as far south as the middle of the United States, you have a good shot on Saturday night, because we're watching solar storms that are rotating into view, and they're expected to reach those optimum positions by then. Meantime, we're still going to be monitoring this and sending you perhaps an additional report as we watch these auroras night after night. Some people think that well, how come they're only green? Shouldn't we be seeing reds and purples and other colors? But green is really the main auroral color. As Neil Brown, one of the great aurora experts here at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, pointed out, a truly blood red aurora is a once-in-a-lifetime event. So we don't commonly see that. However, you'll notice that in this image, look for the bottoms of the fringes of the aurora, and you'll see that in the lower atmosphere, the oxygen is being stimulated, as I said, at 6,400 angstroms, and that's in the red part of the spectrum. The other handicap with seeing the red color is that our eyes are very insensitive to the edges of the spectrum. We don't see violet very well, and we especially don't see deep reds very well. In fact, using our night vision, if this were truly a low light level aurora or scotopic vision based on our rod-shaped cells, there is no way to see the red at all, even as gray, because one of the defects of scotopic vision is that it does not portray anything longward of about 6,400 angstroms in any way. It's not just that the image is monochromatic, seen as gray, it's not seen at all. So that's why our members, our Slooh members who are amateur astronomers and have watched the Orion Nebula M42 in person through a telescope, often report that it looks greenish, accurately report, because you're seeing the glowing oxygen there, whereas photographs show the Orion Nebula with beautiful deep reds and violets, blues that the eye just can't see. So often there's a disconnect between what the eye sees and what the camera sees. But not here, not in these auroral images, and not in the report that I'm bringing you from Alaska to our beloved Slooh members. These images that I'm showing you really match what the eye sees and what people have seen, with the one caveat being, as I said, that there are some people who just do not see the green color. Only about a quarter of the people seems to just see it as a pale gray instead.
That's fascinating. And really, this is, though, the time to hunt for these aurora. And thank you for all these tips and tricks that you have given our Slooh members here today, Bob. It's been such a journey to see these images with you and to really see the aurora in motion. It was just absolutely fantastic. And I want
Okay.
to make a short mention here to our Slooh members that if you can't get enough of the aurora, there's lots of opportunities in the clubhouse to look at the aurora. Particularly, we were mentioning a little bit that Paul Cox was on an expedition and he went to Iceland and he saw the aurora as well. And so you can look in just the previous shows here where we have a live shows page where it goes through lots of different shows that have happened recently, just going up there recently, and we have the show that's going on there. But so in the live shows page, there's also shows that have happened very recently, and one of those is that Icelandic Aurora show. And so keep looking at those aurora because it's a lot of fun. And there's lots of different things to explore in the clubhouse. So if you just go to the search bar, also you can just search for aurora, and you can see what pops up. See what's here in just this really this astronomy playground for you. But yeah, again, I wanted to thank Slooh members here for joining us for the show, and also Bob Berman for sharing this incredible experience with us. Are there any sort of last words or last sentiments that you can give us about this once in every couple decade auroral experience that you're walking through right now?
Well, just to say, I'm really honored to share this with our Slooh friends back home. I'll be back in another 8 days, 9 days from Alaska. I hope that the second expedition group, the from Astronomy Magazine, has even one quarter the good fortune that our first expedition did. And whatever we see, we'll share back there at Slooh, here from Central Alaska, really dark parts of Alaska. So it's really been a pleasure and an honor for me. We do this every year, and we hit the jackpot this year. So great, and great going. And my salute also to our other Slooh, the technical chief officer, Paul Cox, for all of his labors, I know, on the Faroe Islands. Also hitting the aurora, the same aurora from Iceland. There, the chances were murkier because Iceland is characteristically more cloudy, but he got it, and also shared that with the Slooh world. So great, we've just had good fortune.
Absolutely, and I think this was a great opportunity to look at this celestial event from two different perspectives. That we got Iceland, we have Alaska, and it's this same really just spark of activity that I frankly can't get enough of it. So yeah, thank you again, Bob, for sharing, and thank you, Slooh Clubhouse members, for viewing. There's much more activity coming up very soon. We have a great show on the total lunar eclipse coming up on April 4th, and there's also some activity in the clubhouse where there's going to be a Messier marathon that is going to be happening near the end of end of March. Yeah, and it's going to be spectacular in terms of just the usage of the telescopes. We're going to be trying to image every Messier object in either 1 or 2 nights, and it's going to be certainly a sight to see. We're going to be reporting on that live in a live show when that happens. So again, lots of activity to look forward to, and lots more to come. So we hope you stick around, and thanks again for watching. This has been Bob and Eric for Slooh. Hello and welcome to Slooh's latest Clubhouse clip. This is going to be a really, really fun Clubhouse clip in particular, just because we've been hearing a lot lately about our Slooh's expedition to the Faroe Islands to see this total solar eclipse. Along the way, we stopped at Iceland. We saw the northern lights from there. But we're here today to get a different perspective from another very, very close member of Slooh who's taken a trip to Alaska. And this is our Slooh Astronomer Bob Berman, who's here with us today to share some really, really incredible footage of the aurora that is taken along his current expedition there. It's absolutely
Weather. That's why we always take our groups to this secret place in central Alaska where it tends to be clear. People in Iceland got lucky. Our Slooh team in Iceland hit a great aurora night on a night that it was clear. But we have had some refugees in past years from Iceland expeditions who told us in a crestfallen way that they were there for a week and had only overcast for a week. So it's not just the aurora. You want to be under the auroral oval in a place that's likely to have clear skies. And I know I'm hogging the conversation here, but the auroral oval is like a donut, a glowing donut right out of 7-Eleven or Dunkin' Donuts that's almost always present. And what matters is how bright is it, how thick is it. At times of great solar activity, it not only thickens but also migrates southwards so that more southerly latitudes can see it. For example, the other night, people were seeing this in the northern United States, and there were photographs from New England showing the glow, but not, of course, the detailed definitions that we've been seeing here and that we're going to share with you.
these physical features, these themes, yes.
Absolutely. And it's true that sometimes you'll get one night with great auroras. I won't bore you with the category and the number system of it, but the things that we're always looking for to make an aurora really worthwhile is it a mere glow or does it have definition? Can you see detail in it? How much of the sky does it fill? How bright is it? Is it moving? Usually there's going to be some leisurely motion, but we're talking about the kind of motion that's so leisurely that you can't really honestly see anything change. If you look away for 10 seconds and look back, then you'd say, oh, yes, I see. It's a different pattern now somewhat, but not actual movement. By contrast, here we have rapid motion. So and then color. Is there any color? Red is a pure red aurora is considered a once-in-a-lifetime event. So do we just have the plain green or other colors? So there are a lot of criteria that make up a good aurora. What makes this extraordinary is with our expedition here, which is now 1 week old, we have 1 week to go, is that all of those conditions have not just been met, but night after night after night. We have extraordinary good.
Absolutely a sight to see. There's been, as you might have heard in the news, some incredible solar activity that's going on right now that is making looking up at the aurora from these northern latitudes really a piece of work. It's something that I'm looking forward to sharing with you today. And so, welcome, Bob Berman, to this Clubhouse clip. Thank you so much for joining us today from the far, far Alaska up there up
Yeah.
north. How is everything over there?
Oh, it's great, Eric. It's really great.
uh,
We do this, of course, every year for Slooh. We have this expedition. It's really in partnership with the Old Farmer's Almanac and Astronomy magazine. Half a month in March. We've been doing this since 1999, and each year we capture whatever auroras are happening and share them with our Slooh community. And this year, whoa, just by some incredible luck, the sun is just exploding. This is the heaviest period of solar activity that we've had in some time, and I can tell you the best auroras that we've seen since the year 2000.
Really? Wow. Like that's a while. And you say you've been going on these trips every year. So each year comparing that, 15 years go by. This is the time. This right here.
Yes.